Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we got another great episode for you today. Today, we actually connect with Jonathan Bottoms. Jonathan is another listener who reached out, said he had some great stories to tell, and he did have some great stories to tell. He's also got a unique story. He is a newer hunter, only been doing it for a few years. He's a self-proclaimed worst hunter in East Texas. I don't necessarily agree with that, but he does have some fun stories for us today. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for reaching out. Really do appreciate it, to coming on and sharing your stories. And then, to you listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I, of course, appreciate you. Make sure you share the podcast with one person. Give us a review. Now let's go ahead and let Jonathan tell you some of his stories. Thank you. All right, Jonathan. Welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
I am doing well, sir. I'm happy to have you here. I was running late, so I apologize for that, but you were here when I logged in, so let's do it, man. Why don't you introduce yourself to the folks so they know who they're hearing some stories from today?
All right. My name's Jonathan Bottoms. I'm a pastor down in Southeast Texas, Beaumont, Texas area, and I'm the worst hunter in Southeast Texas.
Perfect. I love where we're starting off with this one. This is probably going to be fun. Let me ask you this. I know you started you said you were raised in Colorado, moved to Texas.
Yes, sir.
Was it being a pastor that got you down to Texas and finding your
It is.
Okay.
I grew up in Strasburg, Colorado. That's about 30 minutes east of Denver, down the flat area. And my dad was a pastor there.
Okay.
And so I grew up, and at some point, I felt like God was calling me into the ministry. My two siblings did not end up in the ministry,
Okay.
for good reasons. If you grow up in it, it can sour you on the job pretty quickly. But so I went to a school right outside of Dallas for ministry, met my wife, got married, and ended up in Beaumont, Texas back in 2016. So almost 10 years ago.
Gotcha, man.
And I've just been down here in the swamps.
Hell yeah. Let me see. What did I want to ask? Hunting. How long have you been hunting? Your whole life, or is it something you picked up when you moved to Texas?
Actually. So I've been hunting for 3 years.
Okay.
So I grew up. My dad is a big outdoorsy guy, real big. In fact, he's actually, you may know his name. He's running for governor of Colorado.
Oh, I'm voting for him right now. What's his name?
His name is Scott Bottoms.
Okay.
And he's run for governor of Colorado. We've always been big outdoorsy people. And so I've been on a lot of elk hunts, but never as a hunter.
Okay.
We were really into backpacking and camping and stuff like that.
Awesome.
And we would have people from the South that said, hey, we want to go elk hunting. Do you have an area? And we're like, yeah, so we would backpack in and stay with them and chop wood or hang out and like camp and stuff like that. And they would go on elk hunts. And then when they came back, we had firewood or just hang out backpacking and stuff. So I grew up doing that. When I got to, I didn't actually get into hunting until like 3 years ago. I moved down here to the swamps, and a lot of good old boys down here. And deer hunting it's a way of life. And so they got me in. And actually, the first time I ever hunted, if you want, we drop right into the stories.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I was gonna talk a little bit about how Colorado definitely needs a new governor, because the current governor's, I don't know, boyfriend, husband, whatever it is, he's an animal rights activist. He's responsible for the wolves, which seem to be dying left and right. But like, we need someone a little bit more wildlife. So
and that's
tell your dad he's got my vote, even though I haven't really looked into his stuff.
He'll be very happy to hear it. I'm not crazy politically active. I mean, I'm a single voter. I'm a single issue voter. I care about CERVID numbers, and I live in Texas, so we got deer everywhere, But my dad is he's huge on like wildlife, nature, hunting, right? You've probably seen viral clips of him going off in the house about wolves.
I believe it.
I believe passionate. It. So and this isn't a politics podcast. That wasn't. I tricked you so I could get it.
Right. Either way, let's get into your stories, because otherwise we could talk about this. And I now have like not a political podcast, but I don't know if you noticed on Fridays, I now have
the Hunter's
Brief. The Hunter's Brief. So it's like, hey, check that stuff out, guys. I'm going to talk about it. I'm probably this week going to talk about that herd in Texas that just got culled from Texas Park and Wildlife. They've been fighting for years to try and keep his private herd alive.
Yeah.
And Texas Park and Wildlife had no evidence, but killed them all. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'll mention, Jonathan, you said you've been hunting 3 years. You're not the worst hunter in East Texas. You're just a new hunter. We've all been there.
Well, let's wait till you hear the stories, buddy.
Okay.
Let's wait till I tell you about my journey. But no, yeah. It's with my dad. He's all that stuff. I actually was hoping him being governor would figure out a way that I could hunt cheaper. But he's uncorruptible, which is a shame. I've been trying to figure out how I can leverage that in my direction. He ain't gonna do it. So
that is the exact thing you want from a politician, which I don't think many are. Uncorruptible. That's a good way to put it.
I want a cheap way to hunt elk.
Yeah, come on, Dad. Come on. Give me that governor's tag. Give me that governor's tag.
But no, he's uncorrupt. He won't even fold for me, which is a real shame. But yeah. I could start you off right where I started hunting if you want.
Let's do it, man.
All right. I started hunting actually the first year ever. It was like 3 years ago, and there's a guy in my church. It's all oil industry down here, pipeline oil, all that stuff. And so that's a pretty big business, really big. And so
I think I've heard of it.
yeah. Just the single biggest business in America. But so he runs all this, and so he has a ranch in Mexico where he hunts. And so he invited me one time. He's like, hey, do you want to come hunt in Mexico on this ranch? And I had never hunted. I mean, I'd shot some like rabbits and stuff growing up, but nothing big. But I was like, yeah, I would love to. He's like, well, it's an archery ranch. You need a bow.
Oh.
And we leave in a month.
Trial by fire. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, fine. So I started asking around for a bow that I could borrow. And my buddy, his name is Dirty Steve. Good man. Tell you what, it's the South. Everybody's got an adjective as a first name. But he goes, I got a bow for you that you can use. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I go over to his house, and he crawls underneath his porch. And
That's where I keep my bows.
Yeah, he's under there for a while. And eventually he comes out with a bow case, and he's like, here's a bow for you. And so I pulled out this bow, and it's obviously been under there a while because like the rubber is like melted. All like the belt are like melted. And he goes, you don't need all that anyway. It's just for vibration. So he's pulling all this melted rubber, and he hands me this bow, and he's like, have a great time. And so I didn't even practice with it.
I just rolled into Mexico with a bow you found under a porch.
Like, you need arrows. Okay. So I went to a bow shop, got some arrows. They're like, yeah, it'll probably fit you. Like you could tell these guys like he has no idea what he's doing. So I threw this bow in the back of my truck. We drove to Mexico, and the first time I ever shot a bow was pointing at a deer.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so I remember it's this huge ranch. It's like 25,000 acres, this massive ranch. And the deer on there are these monster deer. And my job is I cull bucks. So I'm shooting trash. Yeah. Now, what I didn't know is this was going to give me a horrible first impression of hunting because the trash there is 150 inches.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We go out, and the first night there, I sit down and I get in the stand with my buddy, and he goes, all right, this is how you shoot a bow. Because he's like, you haven't shot it? I was like, nah. He's like, okay, this is how you shoot it. He's like, all this stuff. I said, okay. And so this doe comes out at like 20 yards. And we're like whispering, which later, you don't have to whisper. I threw a Red Bull can at a buck, and he just like looked at me and then kept eating. And so he goes, all right. He's like, there she is, go ahead and take your time. And so I just pulled the bow back, put the sight on, and I shot. It took me like 3 seconds total, maybe less, a second and a half. And I just nailed this doe.
That's amazing. I was not expecting that. I'll tell you right now.
It's I nail her. She flips over on her back. She doesn't even run. She just flips on her back and dies. And he goes, why did you go so fast? I was like, I didn't know you're supposed to take a while. Like I just shot her.
Yeah, it's like, are you supposed to hold it?
Yeah, and so immediately we drag her up, and I get her to the camp, and it's in Mexico, so there's all these guys that are skinning them. And I looked at him, I was like, guys, this hunting thing is easy.
Oh my God. It's
easy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which I did. Now, if somebody said that to me, I'm like, you just wait, buddy. You just wait.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's not hard. Like, you just point at it and you pull you shoot the bow. And so they're like, okay, we'll see. And so for the rest of that week, I was culling deer, And I wish I never would have shot that first deer. Because the addiction that it caused in me has been crippling. My wife, if she has to hear about another deer, will lose her mind. But she just can't handle it. But so I spent the whole week shooting these deer, and the bow that I shot could only pull back like it was like a youth bow or something. I don't know. It was like a 50-pound draw, and it was maxed out.
Okay.
You know, and so quickly I realized that I didn't have the power to really kill these huge bucks. And also I sucked at shooting. So over the course of a week, I spined like 6 deer.
Jeez.
And I only had 5 arrows for the whole week, so I couldn't afford to like use these arrows. So for a week, I just spent a week like killing deer with my pocket knife. You know, like just it'll kill you inside. That's a tough
week. I just
had this like 1,000-yard stare. I came back and my wife was like, "How was it?" I was like, "There's a sadness in me." You know? But so I came out of Mexico being like, deer hunting's easy, dude. Like, they just walk out to the feeder, you stand up and you shoot them. And so,
I have a question for you about your bow. I got to ask. So, like, you didn't shoot it at all until you got there and you shot that doe. At any point from that point forward, did you sight it in and see, like, because, like, you know,
no,
you got some arrows.
Supposed to.
But like eventually did you? And then like how far off was it when you eventually did? Is it gotta be my question.
So I didn't sight that bow in at all that week.
Okay.
I just shot it. And I just figured chances are it need to be sighted in. And I just figured I was a bad shot. So I'm hitting these deer just all over, you know, just all over. By the end of the week, I was down to 1 arrow because I kept like missing and they would shatter on stuff. And so I'm like reusing this 1 arrow. I'm bending my mechanical broadhead back into shape, you know, because I'm a pastor. I don't have any money. You know? And I'm just like folding them back up. And like I would show them, like, nah, that's probably fine. At one point, some guy was like, I can give you a broadhead. And I'm like, nah. Look, it clicks right back in. We're good. You know, I'm shooting these little Rage 2 blades.
Dental floss around them to keep them tight.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness I got the ones with no collar. So you could just like click them, you know? And And so like I come home with like all this deer meat, 1 arrow left. And the first thing I do is I told my wife, I was like, I'm buying a bow.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow. I was like, this one can't cut it. You know, like, I'm going to buy a bow. And so I went off and I bought a bow. I bought a Matthews VXR, like a used one. Beautiful bow. Like, just a great bow. I got it super cheap, like for like $600. There was a dude who, in my church who knew a guy who owned a bow shop and he cut me a deal, you know?
Okay.
And so I get this bow and I sighted it back in and then I just waited till the next season.
Yeah.
You know, so for a whole off season, I'm just shooting this bow nonstop, sighting it, shooting it. My front yard, I live in the middle of Beaumont in the city, and but my yard is 60 yards long. So I spray painted lines across my yard and my driveway. My wife didn't like that. And I would shoot this bow in my front yard, you know.
Yeah.
And that was how I got into deer hunting. Is like I was like, this is easy. You know, they just come out, you shoot them. And then the Mexican guys skin them for you. You know, and you bring them out. No problem. Yeah. And
oh man.
And yeah, so I started off hunting thinking like I'm the greatest hunter that's ever lived. Like with no practice whatsoever. I'm just a slayer. You know, just a slayer.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly that that's not true.
I believe that. Quick question about the Mexico trip. Was it like drive across the border, Mexico, or was it like jump on a plane, fly somewhere?
It's about an 8-hour drive. It was right over the border. So we would drive to the border and drive across and hunt there. There's tags there, and then you bring it all back.
Okay. And whitetail, I'm assuming, if that, because I know there's mule deer down there too.
There's a lot actually. We would mostly shoot whitetail and nilgai. If you've ever seen a nilgai.
Yeah, they're like evil looking cows, right?
Yeah, just it's like a mix between an antelope and a moose. You know, just the ugliest looking dude. But there are a lot of meat, and nilgai tags in Mexico are cheap, like $35. You know,
no way. I've eaten nilgai in Austin. Is a great restaurant. Die Douay. Jesse Griffith owns it. Yeah. He's been on the podcast. He's a meat eater guy, and I've had nilgai there. It's delicious. Hey hunters, have you ever had one of those stories, you know, the ones that you didn't want to tell, the ones that end in failure? Yeah, I've been there. Actually, you know what? The culprit for me usually is bad optics, or worse, lack of using my optics at all. Picture this. I spot a trophy buck, or an antelope, or an elk, whatever it may be. My heart is racing, but the blurry view, or I just can't quite identify exactly what I'm looking at, it has me second guessing. Well, that's where Vortex Optics comes in. With crystal clear glass and rugged durability, Vortex gives you the confidence to take the shot. Don't let poor optics ruin your story. Make every moment count. Upgrade to Vortex and turn your hunting tales into triumphs. Visit vortexoptics.com today.
It's not bad. When you cook it, when you open up it, it's raw. It smells a little off, but that's just how it smells. And I tell everybody, I'm like, once you cook it, it's fine.
Interesting.
But it's a little gamier than whitetail. My wife doesn't like it as much, but we use it for spaghetti, tacos, all that. It's real good for that. And
what was the season also for Mexico? Is it? Can you hunt year round? And what month were you there?
No, it's during deer season. So I was there probably around like November, December. So actually, I think I went like October-ish, but it's real similar to Texas's deer season.
Okay. Cool.
So I was there during that. You can hunt into January in Mexico, which sometimes you can in Texas, depending on how the season falls. But so yeah, there's that. They have wildebeest there. Wildebeest. Of course. I got a story about hanging out of the side of a truck, going like 40 miles an hour, chasing wildebeest, trying to shoot them with a rifle. It's a good.
You
time.
are from Texas, aren't you?
It's a good time, buddy. The problem is I've never killed an animal with a rifle. I'm horrible with a rifle.
I've only killed a turkey. Same thing, man. Yeah. I've gotten like 4 or 5 animals down with my bow and a turkey with my 270, and that is it.
And we're shooting like 300 Win Mag, these big old rifles,
Yeah.
And like, I've missed shots 20 feet from a wildebeest, which is not a small animal, but I just can't. I don't know. I'm horrible with a rifle. Which is fine. I like bow hunting, so that's what I do.
There you go.
But yeah, so we came in, and the next season, I was like, all right, I'm gonna hunt, and like I'm in this area. I don't have like a lease or anything. I can't afford a lease. Pastors don't make good money, so like I can't afford a lease. But what my job does give me is I pick my own hours. So with that, I was like, we're just gonna hunt, and so I just decided to start hunting. I didn't know a thing.
Yeah.
And so I just started going into the woods. Yeah.
Great way to start.
Into the woods. I borrowed a climbing stand from some guy one time, but I got about 30 feet in the air and then the top of it fell. And it's this old rusty climbing stand. And I was like, I'm going to die up here. And so I quit using a climbing stand for a while. The next season I bought a saddle.
Okay. All right.
I like it a little more. But so I started just like hunting and figuring out how to hunt,
Okay.
I started watching a lot of like, hunting YouTube channels,
Yep.
Hunting Public, Meat Eater, all those guys. The problem is that all those guys hunt the Midwest. And there's a reason they don't film hunting videos in the South, like down where we're at, is because it's hard,
Yeah.
And so I would work off these hunting videos, and I realized nothing that they're doing there is working for me. The sign's not quite the same. There's water everywhere. Like I'm walking through my chest deep water, like they don't ever
swamps.
Yeah. You never see them dealing with water moccasins or alligators, and that's stuff that we got down here. And so like, eventually I was just like, okay, well what they're doing, I spent a whole season hunting and I think I got within shooting range of a doe one time. Like that's it. It's thick. You can't see. And the one time I got into within shooting range of a doe, my bow exploded. So I didn't know what I was doing.
What was it? Did you have an arrow knocked, or was it some other thing?
I had an arrow knocked. I'd been hunting this doe the whole season, and at this point, like I found a little piece of property that somebody would let me hunt as long as I maintained it. So I would like mow it and stuff. So I had this little feeder out there, and all I knew is feeder hunting. Like that's what I started on. So I had this feeder out there, and there's this buck that keeps showing up, but it's always when I'm not there. Now that I know what I'm doing, I realize he was bedding down behind me and he was winning me literally every time I was out there. But I didn't know that. And I'm hunting every single morning and evening for a whole deer season because I can pick my schedule. Yeah. So I'm hunting every morning and every evening. But every now and then this doe would come out. And she spotted me one time and I got scared, but she would come out every morning. So finally I was like, I'm killing this doe. Like she blows on me. She blows on me every time I'm here. Like I'm killing this doe. And so she walks out one morning, and she walks out, and she's at the feeder, and she's 20 yards from me. I'm in a tree 20 yards from the feeder. Like, I'm over the feeder. Okay. And I was like, you can't miss if you're close, you know?
Yeah.
And I pull back my bow, and I guess when I went to shoot, it's the first time I'd ever shot. I didn't know you should practice shooting out of a saddle before you actually do it. Everything I do is I bite it. Like, all right,
just go.
Let's go hunt. Yeah.
Figure it out later.
Somehow, I guess I twisted my hand when I went to let go of my release or something. But when I shot the bow, I just heard this round bang, you know, and my titty hurt. Like it whipped me. You know, I had this nasty bruise, you know, and I was like, what just happened? And I look at my bow, and it's just like the string had come off the cams when I released it. And I look down, and somehow I hit this freaking doe.
No way.
I was aiming at her breadbasket, and I hit her far back and up. So I spined her like above the butt. Right. Yeah. But I hit this doe. And I'm like, it's okay. We've trained for this. We know how to kill a doe without a bow.
Pocket knife. Yeah. Pocket knife.
So immediately, like, I look at my bow. I'm like, well, I can't kill her with this. You know? Yeah. So I climb down the tree, and I go to look for my pocket knife. I'm like, oh, I don't have a pocket knife. And I'm like, what do I? So I just booked it out of the woods all the way out to my truck. You know, come through, find a pocket knife in my truck, come back, and I finish her. And immediately I'm like, well, now my bow's like, in my head, it's ruined. You know, like it's done. Yeah. And so I'm just like, well, so I skin out this doe, which I'm skinning this doe in the front yard in the middle of the city, in my house. You know, all my neighbors are like looking at me. I'm covered in blood, just like, but we had to get her done. Yeah. So I take it to the bow shop, and they're like, no, actually, like, all we have to fix is this one of my servos. They're like, we'll fix that. We'll restring it. It should be fine. And
that's like, awesome.
Yeah, I got so lucky because I thought my season was done.
I've done the same thing. So last season, I go shooting with some buddies, and we're just at a 3D course, just shooting, and we're talking and messing around. And I range this. I put an arrow in, range a turkey, go to shoot, and go, or like don't put the arrow in. I'm holding it and I range it, and then I put the rangefinder down. Started it in. I'm like, what was that number? So I put the arrow away, range it again, and then pull my bow up. And I didn't realize I put my arrow away. So now I'm about to dry fire this thing. So I pull it up, and this is dumb. The guy's like recording me in slow mo from like 3 feet away, like super close shot of just like me looking cool as could be. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I fire it, and then the bow just like the string pops off, and everyone's like, whoa. One guy goes, dude, your arrow flew off that way. And I'm like, what? And then so we're like, oh, what just happened? That didn't make any sense. And all I remember is that guy just saying, your arrow just flew off this way. We watched the video, and we're watching this thing in slow-mo for like 15, 20 seconds. And I'm like, oh, I know what happened. And everyone's like, what? And I'm like, well, something's missing. I didn't knock an arrow. And so I was like, oh, my goodness. Like, how stupid am I? And I remember everything I did, and I remember exactly when I put my arrow back, and I'm like, oh, that was so dumb. And I'm like, what's your problem, man? Where did my arrow go? Like, what are you talking about?
I got eyes on it.
I got eyes on it. Yeah. Either way, I took it to the shop, dude, and they were like, no, your bow's fine. Like, totally fine. Don't worry about it. And then I ended up getting some strings from Summit Bowstrings, a Texas company out of New Braunfels. And I'd actually never replaced my strings before. So it was actually a good thing. And my bow shoots so sweet now that I have like new strings on it. But yeah, man, I got lucky too. I didn't shoot anything.
I finally put new strings on it because I was like, we've been 2 seasons on like this string that came, my cams are bent, you know, I'm bending them back. And so I was like, we'll get new everything. And I'll tell you what, like it shoots like a dream, you know?
Yeah, it's so nice.
You don't even realize. But yeah, so I got my bow fixed. I was good to go, you know, and that's how my season ended. I spent the whole season. I probably hunted. I'm not lying. I hunted every single day, twice a day.
That's awesome.
I have a wonderful wife who she's willing to be a single mother for 4 months out of the year, you know. And
how many kids?
I got 2 kids. I got a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And
she is wonderful.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Now I've been taking them. I work at this church, and so out in the field behind our church, there's like 6 bucks that hang out back there. So I have a feeder back there and a little stand, and that's where I take my kids because we can just walk 20 feet out behind the church, get in a stand, and see deer. You know,
that's amazing.
Yeah, you're never going to get within shooting range of a deer with a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, but they're, you know, They like it. Yeah, we're out there.
If they see one, they're like, "Oh, we're hunting." That's all
they're
to it.
seeing them. They're having a good time, and so I do that. So it's a little easier on my wife now. But yeah, and so I ended my season hunting all those hours for like this tiny little doe that I killed out of spite, but it was meat in the freezer, so my wife couldn't say I was a failure, So,
why do all your deer keep coming back with these tiny little stab wounds?
Yeah, so like this, then the off season comes. I'm like, all right, this time we're like, I'm gonna practice shooting. So now I'm like up in a tree in my front yard in a saddle, shooting this bow, and my neighbor. Every season, my neighbor's singing more crazy. I've stood on the roof and I shoot off my roof, like whatever I can to get elevation. But and so I got ready, and so then this season was the season that I was like, okay, we're doing it. Like, we're gonna hit public land, we're gonna find deer, and we're gonna do our thing. Like I want to do public land, and this was the season where like most of my stories come from. I mean, this season, like I had one morning where I stepped on 2 water moccasins, like back to back. I ran into poachers. This summer, I rode a top of a tree through a hurricane. Like you name it, like we can go over all the stories. So with this season, I decided, I was like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to get there. And so like, I go into this area where like, okay, there's deer moving here. Yeah. There's sign, we're good. And, I sit up and like, I got my saddle and everything up there. And I leave an arrow knocked on my bow all the time because I don't want to dry fire it. So I just leave an arrow on there and hang it.
Okay.
And throughout this season, like I chased this one buck all season, and he is my proudest buck to date. I haven't measured him yet because he's probably going to be 90 inches. Like he's the tiniest little. He's this goofy little trash buck, and he sits in the main place on I have all these big deer from Mexico, and this is the one that like this goofy little buck. And my wife's like, "Why?" I was like, "I worked so hard for this deer." Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, like it is my deer. And so I get into this area, and in this area there's a lot of deer coming by. But I have to get back in there to get there. And so when I'm getting up in there, like I'm hunting like deep. And I remember the first time I saw him, there was this little spike buck that came out.
Okay.
I named him Larry. We have Larry's probably the dumbest deer I've ever met in my life. Like he just hangs out. Like I spent a lot of time this last season with this little spike buck, just like 20 feet below me, hanging
your best
out.
buddy.
Yeah, but the problem was he would come and try and eat here, and every now and then I have a cell camera. I would get this slightly bigger buck that would bully him and chase him off, And this little spike buck's like tearing up the woods. I'll stand there and just watch him tear up every tree around me, he's stomping, he's grunting, like he's just, just this, like, just like this, like
Napoleon syndrome. He got nothing, but he wants everything. Yeah.
100%. And every now and then this big deer would come and bully him. So at some point I'm like, I have to defend this spike buck. Like he's getting bullied by this other deer, And so I was like, that's the deer I'm going to shoot. I called him Dave. I was like, I'm shooting Dave. Like
Larry and Dave, man, can't take them anywhere.
Yeah, I give my deer people names.
I like that. Normally it's like Megatron or like whatever, Larry, but I like Larry and Dave.
Yeah, and so eventually I'm sitting out here, and I remember I was sitting in the woods, and the first time I saw this buck, I hear some walking, and I look over, and about 100 yards away, he's just walking through the woods, and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna call him. Like I bought the Southern Outdoorsman deer call, I'm so proud of this call. And I'm like, this is where it's at, this is what we do. So I'm over there like, I don't know how to call. I got the call, walked out there, I was like, it makes the noise. And so I'm calling him, and he looks up in my direction and it just goes back to eating. And all of a sudden I hear something behind me. And I turn around and Larry's just like standing there. Yeah,
he called him Larry.
Yeah, he just showed up, and I was like, "Dang it, Larry!" So I wait, and eventually this little spike wanders off, and I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna call again," and I call, and this little spike comes running right back out.
Larry, man,
And over the course of 2 hours, I called in this spike buck about 7 times. Like he would leave and I would rattle or grunt and he would come running back again. And I want to just like, in my heart, I'm like, I just want to be like, hey, I'm up here. Like, stop showing up, dude. You're going to die. I love you at this point.
Yeah.
But this bigger buck, he never came. And I spent like 2 months just like hunting this area. And eventually, after about 2 months, it clicked in my head, because keep in mind, nobody's ever taught me to do this. I'm just trying to figure it out. It clicked in my head. I was like, oh, wait, I can go over to where he keeps walking by. I don't have to stay here. He's right over there.
Yeah.
And so I just walked over there, and there's just this rub line, very clearly, like he's been rubbing these woods. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is where he's at. So I just stuck a cell camera right there, and I was like, we'll see. Yeah. Whatever. And then I left, and we drove to Dallas to go to my university for an alumni day and stuff like that. And so we're sitting there at our alumni day, and as we're doing it, all of a sudden my cell's pinging right in the evening, right around the same time, about 5:30 to 6 o'clock. It's pinging, and it's this buck walking by every evening right on this line. Same spot. And it's these two rub lines that converge right in this spot and go out into this like plain, this open area.
Yeah.
And there's does that eat out there. So he's checking these does. It's right in the rut. And so I'm sitting here just like stuck 5 hours away watching this deer every night, And my wife's getting upset because I'm watching this deer every night. So we finish it, and my wife's like, okay, we should it's like noon. And she's like, we'll just stay and we'll leave tomorrow morning. I was like, no, we should really get back tonight. Like, and I told her, I was like, so I can hunt in the morning. She's like, okay, fine.
I can feel her rolling her eyes.
Yes. She's like, whatever,
Yeah.
So we get in the car and I start driving back about noon, and all of a sudden it clicks in my head. I was like, if I get back there in time tonight, I could hunt tonight. Yeah. So my wife and kids go to sleep, and I drove 110 miles an hour, like all the way back, just cruising, and just watching the clock. And I pull into the driveway at my house at like 4:30. Yeah. And where I'm hunting is like 30 minutes away. I pull in at like 4:30, and I just grabbed the suitcase and set it in the living room and grabbed my ghillie suit, put it on. I was like, I'll see you, and I just took off. Yeah. And when I get out there, it's like drizzly raining, and off and on raining. And the water's about shin height where I'm hunting. And I just run, I leg it out there. I get up in this tree and I just sit. I'm like, all right, he's going to show up in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like we're good. My wind is perfect. And so I just start sitting and just waiting, and all of a sudden, as I'm sitting there and waiting, all these does come out in the field and they're eating, and my wind's blowing right at them. So they can smell me. So they're like stopping and looking, into the trees where I'm at. Yeah. And I'm just like watching them. And all of a sudden I hear this twig snap. And I was like, and I look down and he's rubbing up against my tree. This little buck.
The tree you're in?
Yeah, the tree I'm in. Like I look down, I can see him through the slots in my platform. Yeah. He's down there. And so immediately I'm just like, just shaking. Yeah. I'm like, this is it. This is what we trained for. Yeah. And so he comes like walking through, and he's about to walk down this trail that he normally walks down. And he starts turning to head towards my wind. Mm-hmm. And I was like, nope, we have to shoot him right now. Yeah, like right now. So I pulled my bow back, and I didn't even range him. But you didn't need to. He was 7 yards from me. I didn't even range. I just pulled my bow back. And I remember I pulled my bow back, and right as I go to release, he like turns and looks up in the tree, and like we meet eye to eye. You're
like, this is for Larry.
There's this look on his face like, I messed up. And I'm like, yes, you did. So I buried it in his chest, and it was a great shot, like a beautiful shot. And that sucker ran like 250 yards.
Isn't that funny? You've been spining all these animals, which is not necessarily a good shot. They all just drop right there. But you get a perfect shot, and it goes 200 yards into a swamp. Imagine this. You're deep in the wilderness. The sun is rising, casting golden light over rugged terrain. Your heart races as you navigate through the backcountry, knowing the perfect shot could come at any moment. This is where memories are made and stories are born. Ultralight rifles are often seen as Mountain West guns, but the Ridgeline FFT from Christensen Arms breaks that mold. This stellar, lightweight rifle is your perfect companion, whether you're in the backcountry or box blind, ensuring you never have to switch between your builds. With its aero-grade carbon fiber barrel and stock, the Ridgeline FFT is incredibly lightweight, yet powerful. Thanks to its innovative side baffle brake, it reduces recoil even on a 5-pound gun shooting magnum calibers. It's like black magic. As a sub-MOA tack driver made in America, the Ridgeline FFT is for those who seek the thrill of the hunt and the joy of storytelling. Picture yourself returning to camp, Ridgeline FFT in hand, ready to share the day's adventures. Head to your local shop, pick one up. You've got to feel this rifle to believe it. Let the Ridgeline FFT be part of your hunting stories and the legacy you pass down.
I didn't find him till the next morning. I looked until 11:30 that night, but it's raining, and so my blood's washing away.
Ugh.
And eventually my flashlight died, and I just was so sad. I'm covered in mosquitoes. And I was like, I lost this deer, But the next morning I walked out, and I just walked where I thought he'd be, and I found him 250 yards away. And there was an arrow in his heart. Like, I don't know how he ran that far with an arrow in his heart, but
isn't that crazy?
He did it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to keep the meat because it's hot where we live. And by the time I found him, he was a balloon,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that water probably didn't do too good on his innards. That gross swamp water. Ugh.
Yeah. And so I call the game wardens and I tell them, like, hey, there's a deer, I'm keeping the head, but the body's out here. Just say, do all the stuff. And I take his head home and, like, I got him European mounted. And that to this day, that is my proudest achievement. Is
attaboy.
The trashiest buck you've ever seen. I posted a picture on Facebook, and I easily outweigh the deer by 60 pounds. I'm like, behold the giant of the woods, and I'm holding this little, and like I work out, I have muscle, and they're like, dude, you're bigger than the deer. Like, I just drug him out, like, but that's my most prized deer, and like everything I did for that deer this season was so hard.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, man, for being the worst hunter in East Texas, you have harvested a lot of animals. So I'm still holding it. I'm saying you're not doing it the half bad. I'm trying to compliment you.
I don't count the Mexico animals.
Okay.
It's not the same,
Okay.
Like I went back recently, and like it's fun because you get meat, but it's just not hunting,
Yeah.
These, there'll be 180-inch deer out there, and I'm not allowed to shoot it. So, whatever. I don't care either way. But so I stood up.
How do they determine what you can shoot? I know you said 150-inch deer, but like I don't know if I can tell 150-inch deer on the hoof versus 180.
So the rule is we're looking for mature deer that are on the smaller side. So if it's 8 points, but you can tell it's 5 or 6 years old, he's not going to get any bigger. That's not going to be a trophy deer. It's okay to shoot. And so you get real good at aging them and sizing them. And then when in doubt, you just snap a picture of them and send it and be like, yes or no. Yeah. They hang out at the feeder for a while. I stood up and peed out of the deer blind this last time, and the deer just watched me.
My goodness. Is it a high fence or is it just they're
it's
not that pressure?
High fence ranch.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, there's giraffes there, like I had a buck.
You're like, it's got tiny antlers. I should probably take it.
Yeah. Well, you can't shoot them, but they'll ruin your hunt. Like I had a buck get run off, and I was like, what's going on? And then I looked to my left, I'm in this old windmill, and there's just a giraffe right next to me, just like eating, and you're like, thanks a lot, dude.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do something here. But
here's a giraffe trivia. Do you know what's actually, well, it's kind of the reverse. So what American animal is genetically similar? In fact, the giraffe is the most similar genetically to this animal.
Man, I have no idea.
Pronghorn.
Really?
American pronghorn, yep. Its closest genetic relative is the giraffe. Which, if you look at them, you're like, okay, they kind of look a little similar, but minus the fact that the giraffe is like 5,000 pounds or huge or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well,
that's it. Little
environment.
Yeah, exactly. Man. But yeah, that's when I go hunting for something, I typically dive deep into the research of the animal. I want to know everything I can about them. Sure. And I struggled with antelope for a while, so I've been researching.
Yeah, I've heard a few years. I heard you had the worst bow hunting experience with antelope.
Oh my
I
goodness.
watch
Man.
guys do it on YouTube. I'm like, you're just out in this wide open plains. Like, how are you getting within 40, 50 yards of an antelope? Like,
Luck is
yeah,
what it
it's gotta
is.
be. Like I can't imagine. It's
Yeah.
it's a dream one day. Next year I'm hunting an elk. I'm going to call my parents are in Colorado Springs. I'm gonna try to get up there and do a hunt.
Great, man.
I've never shot an elk with a bow, but that's the plan, And
Do you already have your tag?
so
Because they don't have over the counter anymore for archery. Are you gonna go rifle?
oh no, I did not know they changed that.
Yes, they
Well,
did.
I'll have to put in for a draw. But when the
Well,
draw
the
comes,
draw's over. So
yeah, I put in for a draw in Colorado this last
okay.
off season, and I put in for Nevada too.
Okay.
A buddy that lives in Nevada. He's the one who showed me this podcast. Austin, if you're listening, what's up? But he's there, and like I'll try to get in. But whenever I guess now my plan was over the counter. But if not,
we'll talk about it offline. I'll help you out. Well, I'll give you some insight.
I would very much appreciate it. But yeah, so the course of this deer season, I'm similar to you. I fixate on things, So my whole deal is like I obsess. It's been this whole summer. I've walked this 11,000 acre piece of public land. I've walked the whole thing. Like I'm out there. I'm looking for sign. I'm looking for all this stuff. And so just being out there all the time, you tend to you make a lot of mistakes because you don't know what you're doing. You run into stuff. One morning, my first season hunting public land, I get out there real early and there's about 3 inches of water on the ground. And I'm hiking through and the sun's just now starting to come up. And I did not know that water moccasins were a thing here.
Okay.
I'm new. I don't know.
Yeah, Colorado. There's no water.
First time I ran into an alligator, I was like, oh crap, no, that makes sense. Like they live here.
Need to go back with an alligator tag. You can get that in some parts of Texas.
Yeah, there's guys that do it right out of their backyards,
Yeah.
But so I'm walking through and all of a sudden I step on like the weirdest feeling stick I've ever stepped on in my life. And I look down and it's just this big old water moccasin.
Sheesh.
And he just like freaks out and takes off. He didn't bite me,
Yeah.
And I remember I paused, I was like, oh man, that was close. Like I got lucky, And then I stepped around the tree and stepped on to a second one immediately. Just right away. And so immediately, I'm like, all right, I'm not moving till the sun comes up. We're gonna wait right here. And so I just stood. I just stood in this swamp for like an hour until the sun was up. I was like, now we can see. Yeah.
I love that. I could see myself doing the same thing, be like, nope, I quit. Sun. I need the sun. I'm not moving until then.
I was fine after the first, but literally the second one was 10 seconds later. I was like, okay, we're gonna.
Yeah.
There's
do you wear snake gaiters? I know some people in Texas do. I
don't.
I never have. Okay.
I've looked them up. Right after that, I looked them up. But
I assume you at least got big rubber boots on, right? Because you're in the swamp.
I wear a pair of Timberlands.
Okay.
So probably no. I should probably have. I hunt pretty deep in, a few miles in, and you're walking through swamp, so everything's waist high water, chest high water. You're in the bayou, and so I've just found I just wear clothes that dry easy, and I just gun it.
Get up in your tree, take your boots off or whatever, or do you leave them on and just soak in them?
I leave them on. I cut holes in the bottom so that they drain.
Okay.
And then right in the side of the leather. Because I read at one time dudes in Vietnam would do that, and I was like, all right, then I'll do that. Yeah. Ruined a good pair of boots. Cut some holes in. But yeah, last season my sole came off my boot at one point, so I just caulked it. I just took some roofing caulk and just caulked it. Like we're good, running.
There you go.
But and so like with all this stuff, like I'm out here in these swamps and I'm just like trying to figure it out. I rode a tree through a hurricane. I got up in this. I was watching the weather and it said it was going to be a little rainy, and I was like, well, that's no big deal. But it's right in the middle of hurricane season. You know, I'm like, that's fine. So I climb up in the tree and I get about 30 feet up. I have all these sticks and I get up there. And as I get up there, all of a sudden, my phone starts getting all these storm warnings.
Okay.
Like bad storm. It's like seek a safe place and all that stuff. And I'm a firm believer of it'll buff out.
Yeah.
So I'm like, ow, we're fine.
Just water and wind.
Whatever. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, and pretty soon it starts raining. And I'm like, that's fine. I hunt in the rain all the time. Then it starts like a downpour, you know? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be really wet. But I'm committed. I will fail all day if it means there's a chance I can succeed. I just don't get deterred. So I'm like riding this, and pretty soon my wife's texting me like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine." Like it's gonna blow over, and then pretty soon the wind starts blowing, and pretty soon my tree's like this big around, probably 4 inches in width, and I'm up at the top, and pretty soon it's like leaning, So I'm like riding this tree, and it's just like blowing.
Yeah.
And common sense would tell you a deer's not gonna wander around in that, but in my head I'm like, but what if?
Yeah. What if this is the day?
And he's on camera. I'm going to be so...
Yeah. I got to defend Larry. I can't leave.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm just riding this tree, and pretty soon the wind's blowing bad. Like, it's hard to hang on. And, like, twice I fell off my platform, but I'm tied in, So I fall off my platform, I'm hanging, and I kind of, like, scramble up on my platform, and I just rode. It was the longest hour of my life just riding this tree through this hurricane. And the whole time, like, lightning's going, like, should I get down? Like, but can I get down with the wind blowing like this? And I was like, it's probably if I just stay. And finally the storm ends, and it's like December, January, end of the season. And the storm ends, and it gets so cold. And I'm just soaked. So I'm up in this tree, like freezing. And I made it all the way to night. I made it all the way to nighttime, but when I got home, I had to sit in the shower for like 2 hours and just run hot water on my feet, and obviously a deer never came by.
Yeah. Here's a question I have. Did the water level in the swamp rise? Like, I'd be worried about, like you're saying, you're waist high, chest high water. Like, if you're going through that and then a storm rolls in, can you even get out?
You can. Like
you're like, I know how to swim.
It's not ideal. So where I hunt, when the water's high, it's about chest high.
Okay.
When the water's low, it's about waist high.
Okay.
And I don't hunt in that, but I have to cross through the bayou, to get to where I'm going. Where I'm going, if the water's high, there's about 7 inches of water on the ground.
Yeah.
But I found that the deer don't care.
Okay.
Like, they just wander around in the water. Like, they're used to being in the swamps anyway. They're really quiet in the water somehow. Like, I hear them on dry leaves way better than I do in the water. Like, all of a sudden you'll look up and they'll just be there. But the deer don't care. And so if the deer don't care, then I don't care. Like I'll get out there. But yeah, I've been there where like a storm comes in, and then you get back and the bayou's a lot higher and it's a lot colder. But you just you hold your bow above your head, and you just get through. I know areas where like there's trees that are falling that you can walk across.
Some higher points. Okay.
Yeah. Make sure you're not anywhere where like gators are actively at. You just cross and you head on,
Yeah. Interesting, man. How many other hunters do you run into? How many people are as dedicated / crazy, as you?
Not a lot.
I imagine so.
Public hunting is it's not the big thing here in the South,
Yeah.
The majority of Texas is private. The standard hunting is sit over a feeder, for, you sit until 9 a.m. and then you get back at 5 and you sit until dark, and that's how you hunt. But it just doesn't do it for me. Like I get bored, and I like the adventure, I like going out there and being like, what can I do? How can I find these things? So especially during the off season, nobody scouts in the summer here because it's 104 degrees and 80% humidity. Yeah. But all I see is that means I'm the only one that's out there. So I'm cool with that. Yeah.
There you go. That's a great attitude, man. That'll get you some deer for sure.
Maybe. We'll see. This summer but also I like being in the woods.
Yeah.
I like being out in the woods. I like finding sheds, and I like seeing, like, I just take pictures of the swamps. My Instagram has a bunch of pictures of swampland, and like, I just like it out there. I like seeing a piece of land I've never seen before.
That's awesome.
And so the only people I've run out to, this summer, I ran into some poachers. And it was kind of a tense situation.
How do you know they're poachers?
Well, okay, so the first time I'm looking on my map, I'm like, if I was a deer, I would be right here, like right there. So I hike in. It's about 2 miles in, and the water's high then, so it's real high. So I'm really crossing. And when I get out there, there's this deer sign everywhere, like rubs. They're tearing up the woods right here, and I'm like, okay, I'm on the money, And so as I'm walking, all of a sudden I come across this bag of corn on the ground. like an empty bag of corn. I was like, well, that's not like somebody's corning out here. Like, that's not cool. And then I look up and there's a feeder hanging in the tree.
Okay.
Right at where I wanted to put my stand, which says one thing. I read the map really well because somebody agrees. And so I'm like, okay. So I start taking pictures of this feeder.
Okay.
And it's clearly on public land. So that's poaching. You know,
I didn't know you couldn't put a feeder on public land.
We cannot feed on public land. You can feed on private. You cannot feed on public. And so
has that always been the case?
I've been doing it 3 years, and it has since I've been. Yeah.
Okay.
The public land, there's no feeding. They don't like you to leave your stuff out there. You need to bring it out with you. Cameras you can leave, but in the off season they'll come by and clean them up. So it's kind of, they're like, if you lose it, it's up to you. But yeah, so we're not feeding on public land. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Poaching is also a very popular thing down here. So as you're walking through public land, you'll see peanut butter jar lids screwed into the tree where they're coming by later and screwing on peanut butter jars so the deer will come and lick them. And it's always this game of dudes trying to get around the law. And poaching just gets on my nerves because
that makes sense.
What's the point of winning if you didn't play by the rules? That's how you know you won. You did it by the rules and still won. But so I start taking pictures of all this feeders and all this stuff, and then I'm sending it to the game warden. I text these game wardens, and so I'm sending it to the game wardens, and I'm sending them GPS coordinates. And also, I look to my left, and there's a camera right here next to my head, just taking pictures of me.
Yeah.
So I just took a picture of the camera, and send it
back
all
at
in.
you.
And they're like, don't cut it down, leave it up. We'll come and do it. And I'm like, all right, cool. And so I didn't see them then. I just left. I'd been hiking all day. I hiked back out. And like 2 weeks later, I'm hiking back in there. And I was like, I'm going to go see if they did something about the feeder. Yeah. But I'm going to come in from the back route. I'm going to come in a different direction because I haven't seen this area yet and I want to. So I go in and I get up to this bayou and I have to cross. It's about 4.5 feet of water deep, but a long bayou to cross over to where I am. And when I go to cross over there, where this feeder's supposed to be is right on the other side. And I go to cross over and I look up and there's a dude standing there. And so right away I'm like, okay, it's weird that there's somebody else out here because nobody else is ever out here when I'm out here,
Yeah.
And he's standing there and he's standing in the middle of the trail that leads up to this feeder. And he's in between me and the feeder and he's just standing there and he doesn't say a word. And I'm like, hey, dude, what's up? And he's just like, doesn't say anything. He's just standing there.
Yeah. Huh.
I was like, what you doing? What do you say?
Yeah. Howdy.
The whole time I'm doing this, I'm like, okay, obviously this guy is not happy I'm here, but I haven't quite put together what's going on. But I didn't bring my gun. I don't have a handgun. I'm like, I'm just here. And I can see behind him, he's got a 4-wheeler with a trailer and a bunch of corn on this trailer.
Wow. All the way out in this, is this swampy stuff too?
Yeah, but they had come in through, there's this bit of marsh that's private land right next to this. And later he said, the first thing he does, I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, we have permission to hunt on this marsh. And I said, we're not in the marsh. The marsh is 300 yards that way. He goes, yeah, I know, but we have permission to hunt over here. We're hunting hogs. So immediately I'm like, okay, they came in through the marsh.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
There's feeders up over there on private land. I've wandered over there and seen it, and I'm like, oh, I'm on private land, and I get off. So I know where he's at. And immediately in my head I click and I go, oh, these guys are the ones who hung this feeder here. They've just edged into the public land, and they're about 300-400 yards in the public land. They're feeding on the public land. And so I'm talking to him. I was like, okay, that's cool. I was like, but this isn't the marsh. And he goes, I know, but we're hunting hogs. And he's got one of the dog collar clickers, And I'd heard his dogs running all over when I was around. So I'm like, all right, then that's probably why he has the rifle, and his buddy's around the corner because he keeps leaning back and saying something to his buddy. But I can't hear what his buddy's saying.
Yeah.
And so I'm standing on the other side of this thing, and the area I want to scout after this feeder is across this bayou by him and then to the right down this path. And so I told him, I was like, well, and immediately I'm like, okay, I'm in trouble. And he's looking at me, and I remember he has pictures of me from a week ago taking pictures of all his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a tense situation.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble. And So I was like, well, I was going to cross right here. And he goes, it's too deep for you to cross. And I said, no, it's not. I've crossed here before. I said, but I'm going to go the other way, away from you guys. I'm like,
Yeah.
You cool with that? And he's like, sure. I was like, okay, then I'm going to cross now. So I start wandering into this bayou and it's like up to my waist, and I get across the bayou and I'm standing right next to him. And I was like, so I'm going to go the other way. Is that cool? And he goes, that's fine. I said, okay. And I like turn around. And I start walking through the trees. And for like the next 45 minutes, I'm like, God, please don't let them come shoot me. My family will never find me.
Feed you to the gators and the hogs. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah, I would just disappear. And I finally got far enough down, and there's all this deer movement, and I'm looking at all this stuff, and I loop all the way around. Like I added an extra 2 hours to my hike, all the way around them, and got out. And immediately I text my wife. I was like, I'm gonna download a tracker on my phone so you know where I'm at.
Yeah, that's smart.
Just so there's no reason to be afraid.
It's no reason. Just an idea I had.
but that's the one moment that I was in the woods and I was like, I'm not safe right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. You just don't ever want to run into somebody breaking the law in an area where there's no witnesses,
Yeah.
But I've been back there since then and they cut the game wardens had come and cut the feeder down and stuff. I plan on hunting right there this season.
Okay. Nice.
It's a great spot. And
there sounds like there's deer everywhere.
Been fed for a while. So it would be a shame to waste it. But yeah, so it's if you're in the off season and you run into people in the woods where I'm at, chances are you don't want to,
Yeah, no, I believe
it's
that.
Probably not a group of people that you want to meet. So
yeah, I've never run into any poachers, but I have been in a group when I hunted Hawaii, which is actually a year ago, like this week. You see my axis deer hide right there. The one of the gentlemen, the guy who organized the whole thing, was sitting there in his blind, and 3 guys walked by barefoot, and we're on private land. Like everything there is private land. There's no public land. Everything's so we're on private, and we know that we're the only ones hunting this land. And so, and then he sees 3 guys walk by with rifles. He was just like, I'm gonna hide. He just ducked down. It's a funny visual for me because this guy would go out into the Hawaiian brush with a gallon of milk and just sit there in his blind and drink milk. And so I imagine him just hiding with his milk, right? Isn't it?
How does that milk not get warm?
I don't know, man. I guess drinks it quick enough. I don't know, but he would just drink milk all day, and
that
he would
blind
send
has
photos to us.
So bad.
Well, no, it's not a real blind. It's like a brush blind, right?
Okay.
So it's just open, basically, with a couple branches in front of him.
Imagine the farts coming out of that brush blind have got to be horrible with the amount of milk that man's drinking.
Maybe. Either way, we texted the guy who was managing the property, and we're like, "Hey, 3 guys just walked by with guns." And the question that he asked, we still don't know, but why he asked it. But he's like, "Were they wearing shoes?" And we're like, weren't looking. I guess maybe." But that was the first thing that the land manager asked was, "Did they have shoes on?"
Yeah, that means it's got to be a reoccurring problem he's having.
Yeah. So either way, but yeah, fortunately for me, I've never had to deal with poachers. But I imagine it being a pretty uncomfortable situation. I'm trying to get this one guy. I think his name's Charles Beatty. He calls himself. He's like the self-proclaimed king of poaching. Texas guy.
Oh, he's got a book.
Yeah, he's got, I think, 2 books at this point.
Yeah, I've read his book.
Older gentleman. I've had him scheduled several times, but then his AC goes out, and I think he lives in a trailer, and so he's like, I can't do it, or his computer dies.
That's Southern living, buddy.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get him on. Not that I encourage poaching by any means, but I just imagine that guy has to have the most interesting story.
He's got some. Have you read any of his books?
I have not. No, I try
good.
and come into these interviews not knowing what I'm getting into, so it's fun every time. I'm trying not to dive into too much of that, but I'll get him on at some point.
Yeah, he'll be a fascinating guest. But no, in the South here, poaching is a thing. It drives me nuts, but it's almost like a way of life for a certain group of people around here, and it's just common. And so it's a regular thing you run onto is people hunting land that they shouldn't be hunting or people breaking the rules. Yeah. And the game wardens are always on top of it. And they should start paying me a salary because the amount of times I find stuff out there and I just text them here it is. I'm the only dude wandering around in the summer. I just find stuff. But no, it's a thing. Yeah.
I believe it, man. I know a couple folks in Texas that they have these giant properties. The game warden's never going to show up, so they'll sometimes harvest outside of season, which is also poaching. So it's I understand it is I don't know, I don't want to call it a lifestyle, but it's a thing. It's a thing down there.
It's a cultural thing, and it depends because it's a hard divide. There's a group of guys that are poachers, and then the rest of us are like, the reason we don't have big deer down here is because people are hunting them year round. Maybe. The reason we don't have big deer is because we're not following the limits. And so that's why like a trophy deer down here is like 140 inches, 150 inches. It's because like we just don't. And the limits are there for a reason, And don't get me wrong, I would love to hunt year round, but that's
you got hogs. You can technically. You got hogs.
Hogs are something we hunt year round, and we do, and it's a good time. It keeps you up on your bow, It gives you something to shoot at.
Keeps you sharp.
Yeah, they make good Italian sausage.
They do. Good chorizo too. But Jonathan, you got any more stories for us? I know we've actually gotten a lot for 3 years, so I'm kind of impressed.
I do it a lot.
Yeah.
I hunt them in the last 3 years. I've hunted apparently way more than most, but it's because my schedule works and my church knows. Like in the mornings and the evenings, this is where I'm at. On my days off, this is where I'm at. I got a few. I got chased by a group of hogs in the woods the first season I was hunting.
Let's do that one, and then I might have to wrap it up because I've got to get to some other stuff. But let's do that hog one, and then tell the people where they can find you. So go ahead.
Yeah, not a problem. So the first season I'm hunting, I'm wandering into the woods and I'm looking for something, anything. I don't know what sign looks like.
Yeah.
And I find what looks like deer tracks. Now I know the difference between hog tracks and deer tracks. But I was like, oh my gosh, the biggest group of deer I've ever seen. Walked through here and they're digging for something.
Wonder where all these deer digging.
I just started following this trail. Yeah. And as I'm following it, all of a sudden, like, I start hearing stuff moving around in the woods around me, And so in my head, I'm like, we're right on them. Yeah, we're in it, dude. Like, this is what the videos look like. And so as I'm walking, like, I'm hearing it and they're moving, and pretty soon it's more and more. And pretty soon I realize this isn't deer.
Yeah.
They're too loud, and they're everywhere. Like, they're surrounding me. And so once my head starts to click into place, I'm like, oh, I think I've run into a group of hogs. Right about that time, I realize I'm surrounded by them and they're moving, dude. They're like going through the woods. I can hear them on my left and my right, and they're running around.
What time of day is this? Midday, morning, evening?
It's probably about 10 a.m.
Okay.
But when the water rises, the hogs push to different areas, so that they can root. And so the water's high and they've pushed in. And so rise is going on. I start to realize, like, oh, I'm in trouble. Like, I'm way out here and there's hogs all over, and like, I don't know what to do. And at this point, I didn't carry a handgun on me. I didn't know you were supposed to.
Yeah.
All I have is my bow. And so I was like, well, we're going to figure it out. That's always, I'm like, we'll figure it out. And so all of a sudden they start coming through and I can hear them running up in front of me. They're like grouping and coming down this trail that's in front of me. And so I knock an arrow on my bow and I draw and I'm just waiting. I'm like, the first hog that comes out, I'm taking one of them with me. And so I'm just waiting. And pretty soon all these hogs just come running around this thing and they're just running at me. And immediately I shot my bow and ran at the same time. So I never, I'm real brave until it's happening. And then I'm like, this is a mistake. I fired my arrow just somewhere, just into the sky for all I know. And I just took off running, dude. And I could hear him running behind me and I'm just booking it. And I don't know how far I ran. In my head, it was a mile. It was probably 70 yards, but I just run and I run up to this tree and I just start kind of like shimmying up this tree, and they ran right underneath me and just kept on running, and I shimmied down and just went and finished my hunt. But
that's crazy.
But it was this wild moment. That's the first time I realized, like, I used to make fun of people when they'd be like, they show up in packs of 30, and I'm like, whatever, dude. And no, they straight up do. Like,
man, I've been chased by hogs one time. It wasn't really chased, but it's a funny story. So I'm hunting riverbeds in Texas, and I park my truck on the side of this road, right? So I get up and we look at my truck, and so we empty our shotguns because we got to kind of like scramble up these rocks to get out of this river. So our shotguns, we're hunting with double out buckshot. are empty. And we get up and we look at my truck, and there's 20 hogs, like basically on this highway on the side of the road, just surrounding my truck. And so I'm like,
Nice.
I don't know what to do. And my buddy's like, me either. And so we kind of take a step forward. They notice us and they start bluff charging, like 2 or 3 of them at a time. We'll just charge in. I'm like, oh God, what do we like? What, like we're thinking about using our shotguns as like, beat down sticks. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. We can't shoot on the highway. So I call the game warden. And I'm like, sir, there's a bunch of hogs. Can we shoot them? And he's like, well, yeah, shoot a hog. And I'm like, okay, well, they're next to our truck, which is right off the highway. He's like, no, you can't shoot on the highway. And I'm like, well, they're charging us. And he's like, oh, shoot them, son, shoot them. And so he's like, you can defend yourself. That's fine.
Nobody would hold it. If a game warden showed up, you'd be like,
yeah,
they're like,
exactly.
It's a problem. Take them out. Yeah.
So me and my buddy, basically, we shoot them a little bit and got in the back of the truck, and they hung around for a minute or two and eventually scurried off. But no hogs were harmed on that particular day. But it was a pretty scary moment because they were charging, and there was like 20 of them. So
and they're mean. Like they'll gore you. Like I find dogs all the time. Hog dogs wander up while you're in the woods, and they're just bleeding. And you just kind of like take them somewhere and patch them up, or you try and find who owns them. Like. They're mean, you know, but
they're a crazy species, man. It's crazy that like they're basically domestic pigs, right? There's nothing
100%.
Genetically different.
Every now and then you'll find one with an ear tag.
Yeah.
And it'll be a little like somebody's pig got out and they turn feral within like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like 3 months they start growing tusks.
Yeah.
Like they don't have them on farms, but for something about getting out there where they're like, I got to defend myself, they're like, I'm just going to grow some teeth.
They grow tusks, they grow hair.
Thing. Yeah, it's crazy.
They can have like 10 babies at a time and they can do it like every 6 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's wild how quick. Yeah.
I've said this before on the podcast, but like I remember hunting Texas one time, turning a corner and just being like, "What the hell happened here?" And it just had looked like 2 feet of earth had been flipped upside down for like a football field.
Yeah, it looks like somebody irrigated a field, to plant.
And it's just hogs just rooting it up. And this guy was like, "Yeah, shoot as many as you want." And I was like, "Deal." And then I didn't see another hog. That's how it works.
Wait till 2 a.m. they'll be there.
Yeah,
we always take a 5-gallon bucket full of deer corn and you pour a whole bunch of like water and Kool-Aid mix in there, and then you leave it in the sun for a week, and it'll just like sour. It gets so gross. And then we go dump that in the woods, and they'll just show up. And then you shoot them off the sour corn.
There you go. There's a little recipe for everybody. We don't normally do recipes, but we got one today.
There you go. Yeah, put it in your book. It tastes horrible.
There you go. All right, Jonathan. Well, man, this was fun. This is a lot of fun stories, brother. I really appreciate you, reaching out, because you were another amazing listener who found my little form and filled it out. But thanks for sharing, man. This was a lot of fun, and I bet there's a lot of new hunters that are really going to enjoy your stories. So thank you.
Yeah, for new hunters out there, like, just keep doing it. You know, like, time I fail, I just learn and I do it different next time. But like, what matters is getting out there. Like, we're hunting, we're having a good time, and if you're lucky, you get something. If not, you still get to spend your day in the woods.
Best lessons are self-taught, man. It's like, why don't I just move over there? The deer's right over there. It's brilliant.
It took 3 months to figure it out, but we did.
Yeah. Well, let's do this, man. Why don't you share whatever you want to? If you want to walk off into the sunset, that's fine by me. But if you want to share any socials or websites or whatever, let's do it.
Yeah, I don't know. My Instagram is Jonathan_Bottoms. If you want to follow me, it's always something. I have a million hobbies, so I do stuff like that. Same Jonathan Bottoms on Facebook.
Okay.
If you're in the Southeast Texas area, look up our church, ChristianFellowship.church. We're just good people. Yeah. Living life, serving God. And if you're interested, come and check us out. We'd love to have you. We'll go hunt together.
Hey, there we go, man. I'll put links to everything in the show notes, guys. If you're interested in a new church, if you're in the area, I'd have you as my pastor, man. That'd be fun. Probably every other sermon's about deer hunting.
I try to limit how many deer stories I tell because the church makes fun of me. But
I saw it was like a social media post, a preacher like in church preaching about something and using his bow as the example. It was pretty funny.
A bunch of them that do it. Yeah, I don't want to. I get afraid of being corny if I'm not, if I'm doing too many things. But like, we're here, and I'll talk about hunting all day. Show up at the church, we'll do it, dude.
There we go, man. All right, Jonathan. Well, this was fun, man. I appreciate you. Thanks again for reaching out, and really, thank you for sharing the stories. Those were great.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. Again, I want to thank Jonathan for coming on the podcast, sharing his stories, sharing his follies, sharing his fun. It was super cool to hear the stories of the poachers and the swamp, and it's just something that I really have no experience with. So it's super fun to hear those stories. So, Jonathan, thank you again for being brave enough to reach out and say, hey, I've got some stories to tell. And then, of course, for sharing your stories with us. As for you listeners, thank you guys again. I really do appreciate it. I would love it if you could review the podcast on whatever you're listening to. I would really appreciate that. Beyond that, if you could share it with one person. And most importantly, if you have some fun hunting stories, reach out to me. I'd love to hear them. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Get out there and make some stories of your own.